Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Movie Watch Live. We're back again, and this time we have a very special guest for tonight's show. On tonight's show, we'll be watching Memphis Belle, which is from 1990, and it is a war movie, World War II war movie, about the mission, or the 25th last daylight mission of the B-17 bomber, which is the Memphis Belle, as most people know it, on its daytime bombing mission over Bremen, and the story of the pilots, the aviators, and how they braved that moment. And joining me again, as usual, are my two co-hosts, both Carl Hungus and Aldous Huxley. But the special guest that I spoke of tonight is Eric Weathers, man of letters, who is not only a well-known artist in the comic book world, but also has lettered almost every major comic book in at least in Comicsgate, and also in the wider indie comic book scene as well. If you've read it, most likely Weathers has lettered it, and he's also got his book out right now on IGG, on Indiegogo, available to buy right now, which is called Flying Fortress, which is over 200 pages of comic book goodness, which interestingly is also about the same plane we're going to be watching tonight. Not the exact same plane. I believe his book, his plane is called Bombing Betty. Mm-hmm. But he's here tonight. Good evening, Eric. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here, Pete, Carl, Aldous.
Yeah, it's our pleasure, man.
Yeah, and have you seen this film before, Eric?
Yes, I have. When you make a comic book about a B-17, there's very few Hollywood selections to pick from when it comes to B-17 footage. But this was an influence for sure.
And what about your book, which is available now? What was the inspiration for that?
Well, our book is about a B-17, and it's mostly about the crew. They go on a secret mission to bomb Hitler. They are on their last mission. They're on their 25th mission, and they succeed in bombing Hitler, but they get shot down, and they crash land in the Middle Ages. So it takes a slight detour from reality, but it was influenced a lot of our love for World War II and just sort of campy comic book stuff, and we sort of mixed the two together. I like to call it, I like to describe it as Indiana Jones meets Memphis Belle meets Stargate.
Now, did you come at it more as like a fan of World War II history, or was it just the motifs of the time that kind of drew you as an artist, or what was that kind of drew you to that genre?
Yeah,
okay.
I'd say it's more the motifs of the time. I am a fan of World War II history, but my knowledge of it is not very deep. So I think your description of fan of the motifs, I like that. But we wanted to do a book that was set in World War II.
Have this whole kind of like look to it. You see, like when I'm looking at the drawings you have in your campaign, it looks like the 1940s. The Ted Lehman print he did, it looks like, how they portray those times in the movies and stuff. They kind of had that kind of sepia sort of tone to them and all that.
Yeah, and that was a conscious decision. Once the wheels fall off of the story, we make that turn, we sort of take out that vintage look, and it goes more modern, I guess you could say, because it is obviously it's still set in 1943, but it's an alternate dimension that's in the Middle Ages. So, but it's got all sorts of sci-fi craziness with alien technology and the Nazi group known as the Infinite Reich and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Sounds badass.
Okay. So that's on Indiegogo right now, is that right?
That's correct. Flying Fortress Remastered on Indiegogo. We've got a week left in the campaign.
Yeah, 7 days left. You're at 17,618. Let's get that one up. Let's get it up, guys. This is great. Yeah. We want 20,000 because we get that $20,000 stretch goal, which is the postcards, right?
Yeah, 20,000. We're going to do 6 postcards. They're all going to be pinup ladies, pinup girls in that classic nose art style. So we're having art from Billy Tucci, Kyung Lee, John Malin, Matt Weldon, Elliot Fernandez, and Kelsey Shannon. And if you go to the Indiegogo campaign, I just put an update up there with 3 pieces of artwork. Kelsey being the newest one that I got last night, actually. So lots of good stuff on the campaign to look at. You can take a look at the artwork, see the different perks we have, and all the stuff that you're going to get if you back it. What you'll get in the mail in a couple of months.
Good. And for the audience, you've already heard Carl Hungus there. Good evening, Carl. Have you seen this movie before, and how are you doing?
Dude, I saw it like 20 years ago or something, but it'll be interesting. I'm doing great, actually. I was talking to Sierra Whiskey last night. We were talking about coming on and doing this, and I wanted to find it, but my dad's uncle was on a bomber in World War II in the European theater, and he wrote like a little tiny memoirs, like a little pamphlet memoir. And I wanted to have that because they got shot down. I think it was either over France or Belgium or something like that. He actually got captured and spent the rest of the war in a POW camp, and it was kind of interesting. It tied in, but I just can't find it. I didn't want to give you any weird false information, so we'll just forget I said it. Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's amazing. That again, another connection there. I remember you saying that as well. And finally, Aldous Huxley. Good evening. How are you tonight? And also, have you seen this movie before?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Pete. It's great to be back. Thank you again for the invite. This is something I always look forward to. It's kind of become a tradition of sorts for every other Saturday. But no, I grew up on this movie. I've been a World War II history nerd as long as I can remember. And man, after I saw this in the theater at least twice, man, I dragged my dad to it both times. And then once it came out on VHS, if it wasn't a Star Wars movie or an Indiana Jones movie, it was probably Memphis Belle that I was burning up in the VCR as a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of similarities between, that kind of wartime aviation and Star Wars, because we know George Lucas was heavily influenced by those movies for the Star Wars trilogy. So what we're going to do, audience, is if you're watching live or if you're watching recorded, what we normally do is we get a copy, either DVD or streaming, and we're going to watch through it together and then talk about the movie as we go through. So if you haven't got the movie already, I've rented it on Amazon, and I believe Carl's got it on eBay. eBay?
No, YouTube.
Hang on a minute, on YouTube. Unless eBay's doing videos now, wouldn't be surprised.
You gotta lay off the crumpets, bro.
Yeah, there's the first boomerism, just to let the audience know.
First of many, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so whichever way you're going to watch the movie, we have it ready. What we normally do is a quick countdown. And I'll go from 3 to 1. Then I'll say go. And when I say go, you would just press on the play button for the movie, and then we'll usually get through it without too many boomerisms. And
as our wonderful audience knows, by this point, we always are out of sync by a half an hour in anyway, so it doesn't matter.
So that's a good point, though, because if anybody needs a timestamp at any point, just let us know. I'll just put the link for the Indiegogo campaign up there in the chat as well, if anybody wants to check that out.
Were you able to do that? I wasn't able to do it. I was trying to.
I don't know why I didn't let you call it. I mean, you're definitely, you're a mod on the chat. I'll have to look at the sentence, but I don't know why. It should let you do it, but never mind. I've just done that there. So I'm ready to go. So if everybody's ready, we'll get this bird in the air, and I'll count down from 3, 2, 1. Go. So I've got the Warner Brothers icon on the screen there.
The sound picture, yeah. Good.
And here we go.
So far, so good. We've 5 seconds in. We haven't managed to screw up yet. So
give me time.
I usually try to close captions on so I can hear what you guys are saying.
I don't have captions on mine, but I've got it turned up enough to hear it. So,
yeah, I am going through. I'm going through Amazon, so I do have captions. Yeah. And this film was predominantly funded and created, or most of the people involved were British. So it was filmed in 3 locations in England.
That's right. You notice the British satellite broadcasting, BSB. That was the origin of Sky before it became Sky. So there's That's the start there. Summer of 43, fierce battle raged over the skies of Europe. Every day, hundreds of young airmen faced death as they flew bombing raids deep into enemy territory. Fewer and fewer were coming back. Now you get this fantastic sequence through the clouds here.
Now, I think the only thing more dangerous or had a higher casualty rate during the Second World War was like being on a submarine, wasn't it, than being on a bomber?
Yeah, it was particularly the daytime bombing runs were extremely dangerous. I mean, it was,
I could see him coming for miles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, are we going to plan on having the argument over whether it's an ME 109 or a BF 109 later, or do you want to do that now?
Well, I know that it was difficult for them to get a hold of those aircraft, so they are modified. The German fighters are modified. I think they're 111s. So here the crew are playing football. Now the actors in this movie, people are going to recognize quite a few of them.
It's everybody for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were in a movie in the 80s. You're probably in this film.
Yeah. So John Lithgow plays Lieutenant Colonel Bruce Derringer, he's sort of like the narrator in a way. He comes to try and get some publicity out of them and put them on war bonds for back home. Eric Stoltz is Staff Sergeant Danny Boy Daly, the radio operator, an Irish American.
Well, it's important too to note that so a B-17 had a crew of 10, 4 officers, and then usually 6 non-commissioned. And the non-commissioned guys, unless I'm mistaken, usually were the gunners.
Gunners and the radio man was a non-commissioned, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the pilots, the navigator, and the bombardier were officers, I believe.
Yeah. And we've got
the navigator and those kinds of guys. All the things that require you to think.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's narrating there on the movie? Who's it doing the narration?
It sounds like Matthew Modine.
Yeah,
sure that's him.
Yeah.
And I believe Matthew Modine actually wore his grandfather's bomber jacket in this movie.
Oh,
yeah, I read that.
Yeah.
Was a B-17 pilot.
That's a brilliant open scene. That is fantastic.
That shot of the plane going right over as he's celebrating, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. The ground sequences were filmed at the RAF Binbrook in Lincolnshire, which probably could have been where they flew from. They're all in the southeast, the bases. But the flying sequences are over the Imperial Airfield War Museum, Duxford, which is used for air shows every year. There's fantastic air shows there.
Could they have any bases up in your area of the country, Pete?
There's a couple of operational RAF bases up where I live. Yeah. There's not many sort of abandoned RAF bases now. Most of them have been either built on or converted into something else or other, or demolished. But yeah, there's one main operational base north of where I am on the coast, and that's really a radar base rather than aircraft.
So here we have John Lithgow playing Lieutenant Colonel Bruce Derringer, and then the indomitable David Straightharn as Colonel Craig Harriman, who was in charge of the bomber group.
What else have I seen him in? Because I recognize him.
He's in everything.
He's the guy that I confused with Stanley Tucci.
Yeah, he's very similar to like J.T. Walsh in the 90s. He's in everything.
He's been in
from 8 Men Out. Yeah. Gosh, A League of Their Own. Oh man, The Firm, River Wild, Losing Isaiah, Dolores Claiborne, Mother Night, L.A. Confidential.
Yeah.
Simon Birch. He's in everything. Midsummer's Night Dream. He's just he's a character actor. He's used very frequently. Very busy man.
And of course, John Lithgow.
Yeah.
From the non-Academy Award-winning Harry and the Hendersons.
Yes, fresh off his success with Sasquatch.
So I was fortunate enough to be able to visit the Memphis Belle about 3 or 4 years ago. It came into my hometown and we got to take the tour, and didn't get to fly it. You know, they would take you up and do like a half an hour flight around. I didn't get to do that, but I got to take the tour of whatever version of that Memphis Belle it was. I got to see it. It's a lot of fun.
I actually got to see a B-17G flying around in the air yesterday. There was one semi-locally at an air show. So I got to see one. It was $450 for a ride. So I didn't make it aboard, but I got to see it in the air a little bit.
Well, tell Mrs. Huxley that your birthday's coming up.
Well, yeah, there was 5 airworthy B-17s used in this film.
Isn't that a miniature there?
Yeah.
We can sort of tell these days, but back then that's still really well done. To be honest, I think.
Yeah.
You know.
This scene actually influenced a part in the book early on in the book. There's a crash landing. It doesn't end like it does here, but yeah, it's part of the influence that we took from this movie in the book was that scene right there.
And there you had a brief shot of a very young Harry Connick Jr. making his film debut in this movie.
Yeah.
Yes, and he sings as well.
Yeah.
Then, of course, you have prior to his retirement to the Shire, Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah, I was going to say
pre-gardening.
This is yeah. Well, I think it happened to him as well, didn't it, Eric? He was on the bomber, minding his own business. Next thing he knew, he dropped into a different dimension, and suddenly he was a hobbit.
Yeah,
so he had to just get on with it, really.
He doesn't have all that sweet Patty Duke money in the Shire.
No. But yeah, there was the 5 planes. The main one was called Sally B. That was a B-17G called Sally B. And they had 2 French planes. One crash. There was a serious crash with one of the planes on a near takeoff towards the end of the filming of the movie. I don't think anybody was fatally injured, but it was one of the things that happened during the filming. So, quick rundown of the actors. We mentioned Matthew Modine. Tate Donovan plays Luke Sinclair. D.B. Sweeney as Phil Lowenthal. Billy Zane as Val Kozlowski, the Bombardier. Eric Stoltz, Staff Sergeant Danny Boy. Reed Diamond as Staff Sergeant Virgin Hugestetter. Sean Astin as Staff Sergeant Richard Rascal Moore. Courtney Gaines, Neil Giuttoli, Harry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Pete.
Harry Connick Jr., David Stratham, John Lithgow, Jane Horrocks, and Mac McDonald. Also, apparently, I believe Sandra. I won't say Sandra. Shall I say Sandra Bollocks? Sandra Bullock. Was tried out for this movie, did film a scene, but it got cut at the end.
I didn't know that.
So, Aldous, did you hear, in the past couple months, the U.S. Army is going to be going back to these pink and green uniforms?
No, really? Wow, yeah, that's interesting.
Going back to the pinks and greens.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
Which I think is pretty goddamn cool.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting that, I think it's one of those where that's probably more of a political propaganda move than a reasonable move. It's harkening back to maybe an era of perhaps more discipline, if you would so say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's partially that. It's also partially every branch of the military likes to have its own uniqueness over the other branches of the military. So that aspect kind of goes into it as well. Like whenever the Marines come out with a new camo, the Army's got to get new camo, and then the Air Force has to get new camo. Then the Navy's like, we want camo too. Hence, they picked the worst camo color scheme to be on a ship ever, so you look like waves. That bluish camo they were using for a while. So it's partially the politics of putting on a better face, and the inter branch rivalry.
Yeah, I've always been disappointed that the Navy did not stick with the razzle dazzle camouflage that they used during World War One, and a little bit
cool
too. It's a little surreal when you see some of those merchant marines and destroyers with those black and white irregular lines.
Yeah. All right. I honestly, guys, I gotta jump off.
No worries.
We got friends coming over, so thanks for having me on, and enjoy the movie. And hey, you know what? Back Flying Fortress on Indiegogo.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
And next time, I'll make sure I don't have anything else planned.
Well, thanks for coming on, Rick.
All right, man. Have a good one, guys.
Take care.
Take care. Yeah.
So yeah, there was. I'm just trying to find the information. There was 3 actors in this movie who appeared in Back to the Future. Billy Zane was the guy who split George McFly up, cut in the dance, the Enchantment of the Sea dance, and there's two other actors who appeared in Back to the Future. You were saying, was it Carl or was it you, Aldous, was saying the guy who was going to play Marty McFly?
Yeah, originally they wanted Michael J. Fox, but he was locked into a contract and wasn't able to film. So they hired Eric Stoltz, and they actually filmed quite a bit of the movie. And then Michael J. Fox became available, so they fired Eric Stoltz and hired Michael J. Fox and refilmed those portions of the film. If you go on YouTube, you can actually see some of the Eric Stoltz footage, set both independently and side by side with the Michael J. Fox sequences.
Yeah. Because it's weird, because Stoltz looks and Michael J. Fox looks so similar. And I remember when I last saw this movie, I thought it was actually Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, he does look a lot like him in this film.
Yeah.
And he's a good-looking young man here, despite his ginger hair.
And we've got Samwise Gamgee there as well.
Yep.
So,
I mean, he's Hollywood royalty too. He's the son of Patty Duke and John Aston, right?
is he?
Yeah, he's the son of Patty Duke and John Aston.
Yep.
So that's how we got into Goonies.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, your mother's Patty Duke, and your dad's fucking John Aston.
That certainly didn't hurt.
There's Billy Zane there. Now, one of the things about this movie, and I'll say it now, is it's based upon the facts of the memoirs written by the Captain Morgan of the Memphis Belle. So it's not supposed to be a factual, an authentically factual representation, but it's more like, in a way, a little bit like Longest Day, where it's based upon a collection of different stories
So
to give you a feel of what it was like.
Captain Morgan of the Memphis Belle, not Captain Morgan of Port Royal, right?
That's right, yeah. Or Captain Morgan of what used to be quite a nice spiced rum, but they changed the recipe. And there's your let's go again. I remember him mainly from Third Rock from the Sun.
John Lithgow.
Yeah.
It was Harry and the Hendersons for me. It was the first thing I ever saw him in.
Bigfoot and Hendersons, yeah.
I actually, years ago when I was in New York City for work, I actually saw him in a version of The Producers, and he was exceptional.
He was playing. What was he playing? He wasn't playing Leo. He was playing the other guy, right?
Yeah.
What the fuck is his name?
Yeah.
Max Bialystock. He's playing Max Bialystock. That's awesome.
He hasn't done stuff in. I thought he hasn't done anything on big screen for quite a while, but I might be wrong. But I'm just looking at his. Hello there, Morgoth. Good eye, mate.
He plays both. You'll have this the warm kind of bumbling father in Harry and the Hendersons to a pure sociopath in Wicked Way, to somebody like Harvey Zell or Harry
That's
Zell
right.
in like L.A. Story, which is a deleted sequence, but if you ever get a chance to watch it, it's wild. I mean, the man's he goes in and does such a great comedic role, serving as the reconnaissance commander for William Shatner's head in Third Rock from the Sun.
That's right. Now he's an extremely talented actor. I mean, he's won multiple Emmys and stuff, right?
Actually,
Yeah.
He's been in completely wrong. He's been in a lot of stuff in the last few years. He was in
too much to his eternal shame. He's going to be in the Broadway performance of the Mueller Report. Seriously,
Oh, man.
I'm not fucking
Sorry,
kidding you.
so there is actually going to be a play of the Mueller Report.
Yeah.
Well, I think
thought that was a joke.
I think it's IDW. IDW is going to be releasing a graphic novel of the Mueller Report. So this is kind of a poignant scene here with Matthew Modine playing the captain, talking to the plane, talking to his lady, and the Memphis Belle was named after his fiance back home. And sadly, after the war, they broke off their engagement and did not get married.
But the art, there's a connection to the art again, isn't it? Because Morgan contracted George Petty at Esquire magazine to do the art for the nose cone. George Petty, famous pin-up artist.
Back when it was a worthwhile publication.
Yeah, back in the day. So, essentially, I mean, looking at the broad strokes of the movie, it's fairly linear, and it's really this is the story of the build-up. You're getting to know the characters before they set off for what will be their last mission, the 25th mission of the plane before it's due to be flown back to the States. Now, in reality, the facts are slightly different. The plane did fly 25 combat missions, but there were 8 German aircraft shot down by her crew, but the last mission was not Bremen. It was they did a few different missions, and the crew was slightly different from the cast in the movie. But like we said, it's a representation rather than being really authentically sincere.
Yeah, they kind of they combine characters to make the characters we see on screen, and it's one of those things that they typically do where you're trying to tell a big story focused on a little story. Yeah, you kind of have to do that, so it's understandable.
Yeah.
Right. So early,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so this is May of '43, and early on in the film they hinted at it as Straighthairn's character made reference to the fact that he's been losing a lot of bombers. This is prior to the push of long-range interceptor fighter escorts. Mm-hmm. So these bombers are going on daylight, long-distance raids into Germany, and the attrition rate is exceptionally high. The bombers are getting chewed up pretty bad.
Wasn't there a deal between the Allies where the British were doing the night bombings and the Americans had to do the day bombings?
I've read stuff that suggests that, but I've never seen confirmation of it. But this is in '43, and we're in May. In October of '43, all daylight raids, deep raids, were called off, and they weren't started again until February of '44, when the Mustang was finally available in numbers to escort them in.
Yeah, because the Mustang was probably, it was faster than Spit, probably the best prop.
Well, it's performance. It's the range issue.
Yeah,
and also a service ceiling issue. The B-17 had a service ceiling of around 35,000 feet, and a lot of the smaller early fighters weren't capable of being up that high. Some of the German fighters actually were. The Germans were notoriously more technologically adept, obviously with smaller numbers of aircraft.
Yeah.
But that's where you see these guys they're acting and preparing that, today, hey, even as they're trying to get laid, they're joking about it, but it's serious. It's in the forefront of their mind. There's a lot of people on each one of these missions that doesn't come home.
And of course, half the ladies in this room will end up in America after the war as war brides.
That's all right. Half the Germans in the factories they're bombing will end up in America too. Operation Paperclip.
Yeah. Yeah, another thing is as well, there's a lot of misconceptions about the planes in the war, and like, for instance, the Typhoon and the Hawker Hurricane were just as important, if not more important, than the Spit. It's just the Spitfire's like the poster boy of the
Spitfire's sexy, all right? That's the thing.
It is. That's it.
Sexy.
It's the Spitfire is.
B-51 is sexy.
Yeah, it's a pin-up girl, definitely.
It's a sports car.
Yeah. But but the Mustang was a fantastic plane. The Thunderbolt is also another one of my favorites as well. That's a really nice plane as well. But this scene here is where I believe we're going to see a bit of singing going on.
Yeah, this is kind of more of the camaraderie, showing the attitude of the crews, how they handle different things. Correct me if I'm wrong, the Memphis Belle was a B-17F, was it not?
Yes, yeah.
Just trying to find out the exact specs on the armament, but we can also talk about the one of the things that was developed during these daylight raids was the combat box, and that's the B-17 flights would fly in a specific formation at different altitudes to maximize the arcs of fire of their machine guns, all the gunners, so that they could each plane covered another plane. And basically it created a giant sphere, if you would, of defense so that one plane could not be isolated. And you'll see it a little bit upcoming, but with one of the goals of a German fighter was to isolate a single bomber and then take it out. So you piecemeal and drag off pieces of the flying box one at a time. You wouldn't attack the whole flight at one time.
It's the same principle as attacking a pike square or a square of musketeers. You want to get them to split their, focus.
Right, or wolves going after a herd.
Right, exactly.
Nip at the edges before you get to the meat of the center. So I believe the F had 12. I think it was 12 Browning M2s. One at the right and left waist gun position, 2 at the top turret, 2 at the bottom turret, 2 at the rear, and 2 in the front.
Oh, I got a drink. They're playing Danny Boy. I'm Irish. You got to drink when they play Danny Boy.
Oh, you must be a bit ahead of me, behind me, because I've just gone past that. I've gone to the bit with the guy shouting.
They're dropping balloons right now.
And the funny thing about it is when he sings.
At 23:10 right now.
I'm a little bit ahead, I think.
23:14 is where I'm at right now.
Yeah, same here, 23:14. Yeah, there's later on in the movie as well. I'm trying to remember which character it is. Reads a poem about Ireland and doesn't actually mention the stanza which actually has Ireland in it. I'll find that information later. I think it's on here. There we go. The poem Sergeant Danny Daly, Eric Stoltz reads, is An Irish Airman Foresees His Death by Irish poet William Butler Yeats. But a stanza referring to Ireland is left out.
Well, you can pretty much guarantee that if they're reading some Irish poetry, it's probably Yeats.
Yeah.
Everyone loves that dude.
Now, the previous movie that was made based upon the memoirs of Captain Morgan was much more of a documentary style than this one. It was where we now the Memphis Belle, A Story of a Flying Fortress, directed by William Wyler.
Yeah, William Wyler, the director of such films as Ben-Hur, 1959.
Yeah. So that would have been, I think that's more based upon the actual airmen who flew, whereas this is more of its time, like, the late 80s, early 90s Hollywood production. And it's more about trying to make the characters more immediate through, personal stories. I wonder if this was in any way influential for Saving Private Ryan.
Well, I mean, in as much as any other World War II movie is, right? I mean, that's one of the things that they do in these movies. They build it up, you connect with the characters, and then inevitably one of the characters you love dies at the end, right?
Yeah. So we're about, 25, 35 into it now.
Yeah.
I'll call up at the 26-minute mark, which is in 10 seconds here.
Okay.
So here we have the navigator is drunk, and I'm at 26 in 3, 2, 1. Mark at 26.
Okay.
I'm just a second behind you. We're good. We're good. I mean, part of what they're going through right now is that impending dread, knowing you've got that one last mission to do, knowing how lucky you've been to get through 24 missions, and the dread of knowing that this could still be your last. It could have all been for nothing.
Exactly. There's another pin-up on the wall there behind. Did you see?
Yep.
A lady with an apron and not much else.
A bit cheeky, I would say, Peter.
Yes. Slap and tickle and how's your father? Something for the weekend?
Cheeky devils.
I was trying to see what she was called. It was written above, but I missed it.
Any time I saw this, because like I said, I watched this a lot as a kid, and even though I think they're flying B-26s and Catch-22, the imagery of this film, especially Val's character as he's drunk and hungover, always just resonated with me as kind of like the mental image I had for Yossarian. But, especially in that scene when they're talking about Orr, and Orr was crazy and he could be grounded, but all he had to do was ask, but by asking it would prove that he was sane. Yeah.
I like the bit where he tries to sell
at the pure absurdity of it all. It's just that's what I picture Val as in this.
I think Catch-22 was used as the inspiration for MASH in some ways.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, MASH was written way back written in the late 50s?
Was it?
I thought MASH was its own thing.
No, MASH. Well, yeah, MASH was originally a book though, and then they made a movie and then they made the show.
Okay.
It was like a dark satire, kind of like Catch-22.
A novel by Richard Hooker, and Catch-22. Well, Catch-22 was before that.
Yeah, that was the 50s, I believe.
53.
That's Burroughs, right? Edgar Rice. Not Edgar Rice Burroughs. It's what's his name?
Catch-22 is Heller.
Yeah.
And that's Matthew Modine playing the captain again, and he's wearing his uncle's flight jacket. I think earlier I might have mentioned live that it was his grandfather's, but it was his uncle's, who was an actual B-17 pilot during World War II, and he donated it to the Wounded Warrior Project following the filming of this movie.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the film of this movie, this is all filmed on location, obviously in England, which is where the flights would have taken place. The extras, as well as all of the extras, are local people. Pinewood Studios used to shoot the interior scenes. I mean, that had been well established by that time, with the Star Wars movies and all the James Bond movies.
Pinewood's been established since the 50s, right?
Yeah, but I mean, for American movie production, it really sort of took off with Star Wars,
And there they were, they're going through the mission briefing, and they're pointing out that there's a hospital and a school and a playground. They're looking to minimize, obviously, damage, which is kind of ironic because we're also firebombing cities at this time. But we're trying to minimize damage. And part of the reason for that is the bombardier would dial in the target ahead of time on the top secret Norden bomb site, which would then actually fly the plane to the target. And the bombardier had to take into account multiple variables: what the wind speed was, what the airspeed was, what the barometric pressure was, how much drift was he expecting, how heavy was the flak, all to adjust so that the bomb site could glide the plane into the correct bombing path for the lead aircraft. And then all the other bombers would bomb off what the lead aircraft did. So that's why it's extremely important that they're focusing on this is your target, get identified, get familiar with it, reference your maps, familiarize yourself with this layout, because you're going to be looking at it through the bomb site and you need to see exactly the detail.
What you're looking at, So just a little bit of trivia. A North American B-25 Mitchell was used to film most of the aerial scenes. So when you're seeing the planes in flight, That's where the cameras are mounted. They also had trainable cameras mounted on some of the B-17s and one of the fighters. They had a Grumman TBM Avenger with its tail section painted olive drab so it would blend in so you wouldn't notice it in the shots.
Well, I think they only used 5 aircraft on this, and they painted the right and left sides of multiples of them with different symbols so that they could position the 5 aircraft in different orientations, and it made it look like they had a lot more than they actually had.
You look at the cramped conditions. I saw a little mini documentary of a guy who was one of the original, because they called themselves the Hells Angels, the original Hells Angels. And he came back to visit one of the planes. I believe it was the reconstructed Memphis Belle that he flew in, one of the original crew members, William Yeeps. And he was, even at the age of his, I think it was around 75 or 76 when he went back to see the plane, and he knew exactly where to go and how to get in and out, because he remembered. But the cramped conditions of getting in and out of those tiny little places, like for instance the tail gunner there, the nose gunner isn't so bad, but the conditions of where these guys were squeezed in. If you notice the field out there,
ball gunners, right? I mean, the ball gunners is like that little. It's a very small space.
Yeah. Bit of inconsistency. If you look outside, there's a mature cornfield. Wheat, sorry. That's winter wheat. If it's summer, it wouldn't be ripe yet. So this is summer, but it's not summer.
Well, it's May. You could have winter wheat in May. It would have to be a really good year, but
yeah. There's the farmer. He's about to mow his field.
So there you can see them as they speak. They grab their throat, and those are throat mics. So it's not a traditional mouth mic like you'd experience on like a headset in modern. It's a throat mic. There's 2 pickups on either side of your throat, and you actually have to grab them and press them up against your throat for it to pick up. And it's picking up the reverb right off of your voice box.
Yeah. Bomber patches on the jackets there. That's
back Flying Fortress, you get patches, don't you? Did they hit that tier?
Yes, yeah. On the Indiegogo Flying Fortress Remastered that Mr. Weathers is putting on, who was our guest earlier, if you're just joining us, they did unlock the Bombing Betty bomber jacket patch.
And that is super goddamn cool. Yeah, I think that's cool. I don't know what to tell you.
I love the small detail of like the weathering around the engine cowls on this too. They don't look like new planes. It was handled very well.
Oh, what is that behind there? That's more interesting than the plane. That tower. You see that tower?
I think I'm well ahead. I'm at 34.19 now.
Excellent. Well, it took us a half hour to boomer it up. I'm at 34.30 now.
I'm at 34.29.
I'm at 34.28. Yeah. Well, that's just a Norman style church in the background there.
That's still interesting.
It is, isn't it? Either that or it's some sort of mock.
Yeah, it was probably built in what, like 1300, Pete? Not that long ago for you.
Nah, yeah, just recent.
I'm an architecture nerd.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the best places to go if you like architecture, York.
York's got York. So the most complete medieval city in England.
Yeah, and it's got a real mixture of different styles and periods as well. So this is where what I mentioned before, where Danny reads out the poem about Ireland, but it misses a stanza which is actually about Ireland. But it's just to give you an impression of really what's important,
Right. Yeah. Well, I like too, the mission. They were all go for mission, and then they grounded them for the time for, I think it was weather, and they're just kind of hanging out and talking, and you get this almost sense of it's hurry up and wait.
Yeah,
absolutely.
This is it. I mean, again, you get the, the whole soldier in a foreign land, far from home. I mean, Yeats is is a pretty good writer, really. I'm sorely ignorant of most of his work.
As is most everybody outside of Ireland.
I find the propensity to quote Yeats is directly correlated to how much I drink.
Right.
I usually find it's proportionate to how much of a snob most people are, but that works too.
No, of between Joyce. I have a tendency to.
James
I
Joyce.
love talking about Finnegan's Wake when you get appropriately toshed, and then I love referencing good old Yeats, because that's just.
Yeah.
I'm not Irish, but it tends to flow a little bit.
Oh, yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful poems. I'm the same with, it rhymes with Yeats, but it's Keats.
Ah, yes.
I'm a bit like that. When I get a bit too much of me, you get a bit of Ode to Autumn and stuff like that. But fortunately, I'm not that drunk. So this is a great scene where everybody's starting the engines.
I think I might be on the same timestamp as you, but I think because I'm going with Amazon, I'm behind. So
I've got Amazon on mine, yeah. So you're a few seconds ahead of me.
We discovered that somehow, some way, by virtue of Pete being in England, it speeds up his stuff at a different rate. I don't know how or why that's irrelevant, but it really is, because we had that on one of the other streams where you slow down and things stay.
I'm not sure. I think it's something we had to do with Hangouts as well.
There's probably playing Hangouts a little bit.
Yeah. If I dip out at any point, I'm sure I can count on you guys to keep everything rolling while I get back in, because before I started the show, it did dip out. We notice the other plane there called Windy City.
Yes, Peter. Windy City.
And there's see that one, Valentino's Virgin?
Yeah. Now you can see the mission markers they have on the sides of the planes too. That's denoted by the bombs? Is that not correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't remember there's a delineation between a filled-in bomb and just an outline of a bomb, but I can't remember what they were.
Yeah. The music for this is fantastic as well. The composer, I'll find out who did the music. Soundtrack was composed by, where is it now? George Fenton. Yeah. What else did he do? Not much, but he did The Madness of King George. Right, so
another minor little film nugget here is both Straightharn and D.B. Sweeney were also in 8 Men Out about the Black Sox scandal. Straightharn played Eddie Cacone, and D.B. Sweeney received much acclaim playing Shoeless Joe Jackson in that. So,
yeah, have you got up to the Fantastic Mama's Boys? Have you got the scene where you see all the nose art?
Yeah. It was
Black Eyed Peas, Mama's Boys. That's brilliant.
These are big birds too, and the shots really give you an idea. So you got Black Eyed Pea just flew by.
Yeah, and you can see how the wind's hitting them as they take off. They're sort of, yawing to the right a little bit, if that's the correct terminology.
Yeah, great on some of those cowls too. Going back on the engine fuselage, you can see the oil stains.
Yeah.
where it's just cool weathering that as a former model builder, like that's always the kind of thing you looked for where you did all your
in. There we go. We're in the DFA, Memphis Belle. DF was the squadron mark, and A, obviously the plane. And if you notice, the guy on the bicycle was in Red Dwarf. He was Captain. What was his name again? He was captain of the Red Dwarf.
Yeah.
He had a lot of bit parts whenever any American movie was being made in Britain, because he was like an expat. He was an American living in Britain.
Yeah.
So what height would they have been at flying at this height?
Like taking off, or what ceiling would they be?
The ceiling that they're flying at right now.
They're flying at 42 feet off the ground there, Pete.
Yeah, without a point of reference. I mean, I suppose I could pause it and probably do the math and figure out based off the shadow if you wanted me to, Pete. But
if you could do that, please, Aldous.
This is the Jack show, bro.
So what's the sort of cruising height?
Would be between 25,000 and 35,000 feet, which is above most of the German high caliber flak could reach. Most of their big 88s and the 109s millimeter guns would not be able to reach quite that high, but still easy pickings for some fighters.
Yeah. Oh, the near collision. And for the time, I mean, that's a pretty good stunt. That's not special effects. That's two planes actually flying close to each other. For the time, the effects were quite good. 1990. No CGI at this point, really, was it?
This is pre CGI. Oh yeah, that is the captain from Red Dwarf.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ain't lying. Yeah, Pete, that's a good pickup.
The tail planes, or the tail fins on these planes were huge. I mean, that's something that I noticed about the design of this plane. Massive tail fin. But this was the main bomber of the USAF during the World War II. Is that right, or was there other?
This was the B-17 was the primary heavy long distance heavy bomber until the full deployment of the B-29 Superfortress.
So yeah, because I was going to say the Superfortress was the plane that inspired the Millennium Falcon.
Yes, yeah, with the famous nose.
So what role would say the B-24 have played as opposed to the B-17?
I believe the B-24 Liberator was a medium bomber.
And so when did the B-52 come in then?
That was the 50s, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was
later on.
I think the first conflict that the B-52 took place in was Korea. But let me look that up real quick. Yeah, the Stratofortress. The Stratofortress. No, it actually missed Korea. The Stratofortress first flight was in 52, but its full introduction was in 55. So the B-29, which followed this up, was in full service up until 55. And then actually there was a B-29 that crashed following a bombing run over Japan in 45. And the pilots landed in Soviet-occupied territory. The pilots were returned, but the plane was not. And 6 months later, the Soviets released, I can't remember the name. I want to say it was the IS-20 something. It was shockingly looked exactly like a B-29.
Yeah. What a surprise. How long did it take them to reverse engineer? 6 months.
But there's a famous, oh, this is hilarious, right? So the B-29 that the Soviets got was shot down by the Japanese, right? So I'm going to look that up. What was the Russian? So I'm going to tell the story. There was a hole that was in the front of it. And after the American engineers could never figure out why the Soviets had built this hole into every copy that they did of the B-29. Yeah. And so after the wall falls in 89, the Soviets are like, in the early 90s, are like super willing to talk about anything in their history, right? Because it's mutual shared. We're friends now. Yeah. We're pumping money into Russia. It's back in the Yeltsin era. And so they start asking these aeronautics historians, why did the Russians put this hole in the front? They're like, well, it was there in the model that we captured that landed. And they figured it out. And what it was a machine gun bullet hole that the Japanese put in the front. And so when Stalin told them to disassemble it and re-engineer it with everything, they included the hole from the bullet.
Wow. Wow.
There you go. That's Stalinism in action. Do it. Don't question it. Or else you'll never do that.
Russian copy was the Tupolev Tu-4. So that's Tango Uniform 4. Which has nothing to do with Memphis Belle, but is a fun little aside. So,
wasn't it true? I remember watching the movie about Howard Hughes and Aviator, and the Japanese were coming over to observe his planes at the time, and they were clearly just spies, because they ripped off his plane design for the Zero.
Yes. Well, the Zero was just essentially just an armed up racer. It was built for speed and very little else.
So here we get an indication that they're leaving British airspace, or leaving, they've gone so far that they can't even pick up the radio now. And now they're testing their guns. That's the bit I've got up to.
Yep, we're there.
I think the scariest place would be what's the name of the gun on the underneath of the
Ball turret.
The what gun?
Ball turret.
Underneath.
Yeah, the ball turret.
Ball turret. Now that has to be the scariest place to sit, surely.
Yeah.
If anything's going to get knocked off, it's going to be that.
Well, at least the ball turret gunner. I mean, he's got the door, but he can at least holler back and forth to the waist gunners. The guy on the tail, he's got nobody to talk to. Yeah. He's out in his room. He can't hear anything.
He's got the radio though. Can they communicate on the radio? Or? But yeah, I see what you mean. It's like very lonely position.
I would not have my parachute on. I'd be terrified.
So here's some of the fighter escorts coming in. And unfortunately, because it's 43, they do not stick around long.
Yeah. So what was I don't know, do you know much about the range of them? Was it a Mustang at this stage?
No, the Mustang was not introduced until 44.
This would be... What would it be at this stage then? Is it the...
it'd probably be...
Hang on, I think I've got some notes somewhere for that. But
they be P-47s? Thunderbolts?
There we go, yeah. P-47. Yeah.
With a couple P-39s, probably. Although the P-39s probably phased out pretty heavily and or just in a ground support role at this point.
Yeah.
And really, it's 43, so ground support's going to be limited to North Africa.
Yeah.
Operation Torch is still in process.
When was the invasion of Sicily? Was that autumn?
I think that was autumn. Let me check that real quick.
I know that the B-24 Liberators were used quite extensively in the Italian theater.
Yeah, they're the plane that's the crews fly in Catch-22. Yossarian's B-26 pilot.
P-38. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so the invasion of Sicily, Operation Husky, was August of 43. So this is before even the soft underbelly of Europe has been invaded. This is still Fortress Europe. We're entering full Nazi-occupied territory.
P-38 was long range fighter.
No,
it was in use over.
The War Dogs in the background there.
Yeah,
I'm muting because they're being obnoxious. Sorry.
The P-39 was known as the Fork-tailed Devil.
Yeah.
I believe it's Adolf Gallant, one of the Luftwaffe aces with over 300 confirmed kills for the Germans. He has a comment in his biography, I believe it's him, where he talks about he hated flying against that damn thing.
Yeah, anything that was faster or more maneuverable, they just didn't like it. Germans like to have a huge advantage whenever they do anything.
That immediately becomes not true in 44.
Yeah.
With the implementation of the Mustang. And a lot of part of it is we were throwing pilots up with very little experience, but also the Germans, once you were fighting. You weren't rotated out. So you had guys that fought in the Spanish Civil War and then right up since 39. So it was, you had professional fighter pilots that, like I said, had over 200 to 300 confirmed air-to-air kills. And there's a lot of instances. History Channel actually did a really good documentary on one where it was an experienced P-51 pilot that was completely outflown by a guy in a BF-109E, which is a very outdated plane in 44. And just the German knew what he was doing in his plane. So skill makes up quite a bit. And when you've been flying that long, just because you got the edge, speed, maneuverability, and weapons doesn't mean you can't lose, War is always deadly, and the man behind the stick or the gun is always more important than any equipment.
So now we've got the stage where we're seeing some air combat. What's going on here?
So this is the combat air patrol, the interceptors that are with the bomber group are going to be they're going to go and they're going to try to intercept the oncoming German fighter screen. And the goal for the fighters is actually their first goal is not necessarily to shoot down aircraft, it's to distract the aircraft. They're looking to get the Germans away from the bomber group first and then engage. So the fighter's goal is to break them up and get them out of formation, get them to break off, and you'll see the Germans immediately break off when engaged. And then they operate, both the Allies and the Germans are going to operate in paired fighting, where you're going to see wingmen flying with one guy's attacking and one guy's supporting. And this is all of this is tactics that are kind of slightly adapted from everything that was learned in World War I. They're still using almost everything that Immelman, everything that Rickenbacker, all the big aces, all their books have been studied for the last 20 years. And all these pilots are very well trained in how to handle themselves. But again, the Allies' number one goal is to protect the bomber.
There's actual footage here as well in this sequence, I think. It's
a lot of the gun cam footage that was you're seeing here is all historical.
So they just colorized it for the film?
No, a lot of it was colorized. Some of this stuff is from 44, 45, when they were still doing color.
Oh, so yeah. Okay, so it's not necessarily from the actual year and stuff. Yeah. Got it.
Another thing.
As the gun European footage is just footage of airplanes.
Right. As you're seeing the guns fire, you'll see these orange lines shooting out of the weapons, out of the guns. Those are tracer rounds. They're coated with a chemical that makes them ignite as they hit the air, and that allows the gunner to see where his rounds are going, so he can follow and trace the
phosphorus compound, right?
Yeah. But just similar to white phosphorus, it reacts to the oxygen in the air. So there's a bomber's been hit, and now it's breaking away from the combat box. And now you'll see the German fighters are going to jump on them.
Yeah, I've just seen the bit where the plane exploded right in front of them. They've lost one of the other planes. And then blood on the window there. I'm at 54:20.
I'm not paying attention to what you're at, Pete, because it's never going to be the same as what I'm at.
Measurement BF-109s, they are not. These are HA-1112s, a Spanish version of the BF-109, which survived the war because the Spanish didn't bother getting involved. They were also the same planes used in the Battle of Britain film of 1969. Interestingly,
like the exact same planes, or just the same model planes?
Were they exactly the same ones? No, just the same type. They weren't the exact same planes, but the same type.
Right here, you're seeing too the hazards, both the safety that's offered by the combat box and the danger, because you've got so many planes flying in such close proximity that if one does go down, you risk. If it veers off course, all the pilots have to be very, very cognizant of what's going on so that they don't impact.
You know, that's just obviously this is just idle chat because they're trying to keep themselves calm, and this is what's pulled out more in a film like Catch-22, isn't it? Where you're just starting to go mad, don't you? If you're on so many of these missions.
Periods of absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Interspersed with small moments of intense action.
Yeah.
So they just referenced Windy City was the lead plane of the bomb group, which, like I talked about earlier, though, everybody bombs on the lead. Everybody drops when the lead plane drops. And so the lead plane drops, so the next plane moves into formation, and now they're all on it. They're all marked on a different bomber.
I think the one that's the lead plane here is the Sally B, which is one of 2 B-17s that they used to portray the Belle. Obviously, the actual real Memphis Belle is back in America now, but this is a B-17, which is the Sally B's in the UK, based at RAF Duxford still. Then that gets a bit of a fly around every year, but that's painted in the colours of the Memphis Belle with the markings and everything. So we're about 2/3 of the way through the film already. It's not that long a film. It's 1 hour. I think it's about 1 hour 40 or 42. Sure. And we're about an hour into it now almost. I'm about 57 minutes in. This is a bit where he can't find his lucky charm, or his son Christopher, isn't it? There we go. Does he drop it out the window or?
No, Pete. We're all screwed up.
What's happened on your screen?
The navigator's having trouble drawing a line right now. Now Sean Astin's talking about a story he heard on another plane.
I think I'm ahead of you. Do you want me to pause so you can catch up? I think me and Aldous are slightly ahead.
Yeah, I'm all right. It's all right, guys. I'll catch up.
Yep. The co-pilot on the Memphis just notified everybody that their escort is leaving. So now they're on their own.
Right. Yeah. I think I've got to where we have a scene of an empty office with David Strathairn sitting in the office. That's where I'm at. Sharpening a pencil. Yeah, so I'm a bit ahead. I'll pause, actually.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on. The guys are fighting in the thing now.
Yep, that's where I'm at. I think your click rate's a little bit higher than ours. I think that's part of the problem. I think you're not moving at the same speed we are. I got the waist gunners are fighting right now. The radio operator's still walked back to break it
I'll
up.
pause until you catch up with where I was looking at David Strathairn in the office there. Just let me know when you get that scene.
Yeah, it should be coming up very soon.
Yeah. Amazon must be on a different pace over here.
It's very strange.
Unless it's a different copy. It's a slightly different copy.
Yeah,
so now we're at the colonel's office. There's the empty conference room table. Shows the flight path of the B-17s. You go hit their target.
Right.
And if you notice the flight path avoids going over land.
Yeah.
Kind of follows the coastline. That's to avoid and limit the German air interceptor. The further you go inland, the more air bases and Jasta bases that you'd be exposed to. So if you skirt the coast, they can only get the ones around the edge of the coast on you.
Mm. Yeah, I was looking at the different ranges of the aircraft, and it goes. Spitfire had a range of about 1,000 miles fully fueled. I might be wrong there, but it's according to the information I'm looking at here on this forum. The I think it was a P-51, you said, or P-47, about 800 to 850, but the Messerschmitts had the shortest range. I think they were heavier planes, the Messerschmitts.
Yeah, the BF-109s were a pretty heavy fighter. They could take some durability, but they did have range issues, primarily because they were so old. The Focke-Wulf 190s, which were a more advanced fighter, still prop-driven, had much better range, armament, and durability. But we're also available in fewer numbers.
So you've got the scene where they're hanging the flags out, or
We're
now back in the colonel's office, and he's handing the lieutenant colonels the letters from the families of the people that have not made it back.
this is a montage where you get actual footage of planes getting blown up to sort of intermingle with the letters to bring home the fact that this is the reality of people losing their lives.
Yeah, so now he's reading the letter from the mother back to the colonel, which is heartbreaking, and you see that the colonel's really not a douchebag. He actually cares about his men, because let's remember that he's on tours too, and he's probably one of the captains of one of the flights. Earlier on, and probably got the attrition rate being so high, and he knows what these guys are going through, and so he's not the guy that John Lithgow thought he was.
It reminds me.
He made Lithgow's lieutenant colonel made a comment earlier that he's trying too hard at being a hard ass, and so that's what this is to show, is that it's the human cost, it's the man cost, is that the numbers aren't just numbers, they have names, they have lives, and this is the humanity, this is the cost of war, and there's nothing to be celebrated here.
Yeah, have you ever seen 12 O'Clock High?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Gregory
Peck. That's one of my favorite movies, and that really brings it home, because you really see because he goes nuts, Gregory Peck. He just can't handle it anymore because of the pressure of, the anxiety of trying to save his men.
Right. Well, and even in The Longest Day that we watched a few weeks back, there was the scene with Mr. Taylor where he burned out and he was just tired of losing friends over canals.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the most poignant scene in the whole movie.
Yep. So now we're back. We're further along. They have no fighter escort now, and here the Germans come again to jump the bomber group.
So basically, the strategy here is to bomb Germany at all costs, because keeping them on a defensive footing keeps them off of bombing London. Is that the thought here? No matter the
This is also an attempt to woo the Soviet Union and to damage the industrial capability of the Reich.
All right, obviously that'd be number one, but I mean, the daytime bombing runs, it seems just like the worst idea ever, especially since you don't have fighter escort. So I got to assume that.
Yeah, I personally think it was a propaganda thing. It was to try and demoralize the Germans, to say, we are so strong we can bomb you in the daytime. I think it was incredibly stupid to do daytime bombing runs. Really, look, it's
especially without fighter escort. I mean, that's just
Yeah. I mean, I know the RAF didn't do it, but then the RAF did other things like close quarter fighting, where planes would fly really close up. There's a scene there. Have you seen the man falling out of the plane?
Yeah. The entire front of C Cup gets taken out by Kraut fire.
Yeah.
They drop out of formation. They're going to head back. That'd be pretty devastating to watch one of your crewmen lose one of your crewmen like that. Plus, without a nose cone, the wind inside that plane is just going to be hell.
Well, going back to The Longest Day, I was watching a documentary about one of the guys who was one of the original Navy SEALs before they were called Navy SEALs. And he was the only one who survived out of his boat. And he only survived because he tripped on his, I think his huge backpack had a strap that he tripped out of the boat and fell into the water. But because he fell into the water at that precise moment, and a German shell hit the boat and blew it up and killed all of his killed all of the rest of his friends. He survived. He said someone, he doesn't know who or what, pulled him out of the water without him knowing, dragged him onto the beach. And so that was a miracle in itself. And then he said, as he was sitting on the beach, he saw another man had been injured in the leg, and he was getting attention by two medics giving him morphine. While they were giving him the attention, another shell came in and bombed a lot of them, and there was nothing left. So, there was no mercy, absolutely no mercy. So, seeing these things, these men have had to live with this for the rest of their lives, So as far as cinematography and movie making, what's your impression, Carl and Huggis? What's your impression overall of how the movie's made here and presented?
That was the best acting in the entire film so far, is when he got pissed off about his harmonica.
Yeah.
Notice the data book, by the way. It's got a 1944 date on it.
No, it's a very well made movie. It's almost handled in like a one scene play, with the inside of the Memphis Belle being the scene after they take off. It's handled really well. It's more of a study, a character study, but it's a good movie.
You know the way to survive a war? Basically, every available pocket, put a hip flask in that one. That one. Just every single kind of portable metal item. So you're like wearing an overall brigandine onesie. Oh, fortunately, my lucky harmonica stuffed it.
So now they're all gearing up. Now that the flak's starting to hit, they're going to put their flak vests on. They're going to put their helmets on. They're going to full arm up. As the flak's exploding, it's throwing shrapnel everywhere. Right. So you've got a lot of exposed windows, and these bodies of these planes are thin aluminum. So it doesn't take much, as shown right there with Stoltz's. Yeah. A hole gets blown into by a piece of flak. Yeah. So,
and of course, flak is basically a bomb. It's shot in the air and explodes like a mortar. So these are bombs going off. So yeah, I mean, exactly. If anything goes anywhere near the plane, that's it.
Yeah, these things are stripped down, man. There's like anything they can take out for weight, for range, and fuel economy is done. So they're not heavily armored as far as like armor goes. They've got the machine guns and the gunners, but the fuselage is next to nothing. And this is one of my favorite scenes, when the can of tomato soup gets hit. It's spread everywhere. So the Val, the bomber, is looking through the Norden sight, which I referenced earlier, and he would be targeting the cross. The Memphis Belle at this point is the lead plane, so he's going to be dialing in their bomb target. And they don't show it in this, but realistically, what would happen is once the bombardier dials in the target and sets it, the Norden sight actually guides the plane through the bomb run, and then all the other bombers follow the lead bomber. Yeah, and this was a very, very secretive piece of technology. The Norden sight was a very closely guarded secret.
Yeah, because it had to be detachable. So if the plane went down, they would take it with them. They would detach it and take it out of the plane. The navigator, you might be interested in this, the navigator of the real Memphis Belle was Charles Layton from Flint, Michigan. Retired as a teacher and counselor, saved the Belle and other B-17s after identifying false radio beacons designed to lure unwary B-17s into harm's way. So in this case, in real life, the navigator, talking about the navigator there, he's the one who actually, noticed that there was fake radio beacons that the Germans had designed to try and lure the planes off course, and he was able to detect that.
The Hun is a tricky foe.
He is indeed.
So here they talk too. They're over the target, but they can't see anything, and they say it looks like a smoke screen. And this was actually something that was started in World War I by the British, I believe, for bombing runs. Is that you'd actually burn oil fires. over known military industrial targets so that the smoke cover would not allow bombers to accurately drop their bombs, in the hopes that they wouldn't just carpet bomb and they would look for strategic bombing only.
There we go. Some information on the sites there. It says the bombardier, played by Billy Zane, depicted looking through the Norden bomb site and releasing the bombs with the salvo switch. When he sees the target in the crosshairs in real life, the lead bombardier would find the target in his sight long before the release point. So he's looking ahead onto the horizon. Lock his sight onto the target, enter all relevant data on the bombs and known crosswinds. Then the sight would fly the plane. The sight would actually fly the plane to the release point. So it was guided. Yeah, you were saying it was guided in the plane. Drop the pawns automatically. Bombardiers on other planes would hit their salvo switches when they saw the lead bomber drop his bombs. So if it was done right, the system was capable of pinpoint accuracy in combat conditions.
More often than not, they would be off by quite a bit.
I mean, that's a hell of a responsibility. That's the success of the entire mission right there is on one guy.
Yeah.
So they can't see the target, so they're actually gonna do another pass. You've got flak exploding all around them. You've got fighters up in the air. Well, there's no fighters right now because there's flak going on.
Yeah.
But as soon as the flak ends, you're gonna see fighters will come back in.
Attack them,
and then they got to do another run because they just couldn't see the target.
Yeah, so there's a bit of drama going on here between the two of them.
The helmet looks absolutely evil.
That is awesome. I was thinking about that before. That reminds me of like the Navy had similar helmets to that as well. The gunnery operators on the ships. Yeah,
the scene that they just showed of the two waist gunners just standing in the corridor. If you get a chance, go to Indiegogo and go to the Flying Fortress Remastered campaign that Mr. Weathers, who was on earlier, did. On that, there's a print that comes with any backing that's done by Ted Lehman that is almost a cutting-edge hand-drawn shot of that with the look of it. It's just it's almost perfect.
It's killer.
I was thinking as well, the Y fighter in Rogue One with the Y fighter. The
Y-Wing.
Yeah, the Y-Wing. Yeah, in Rogue One has just a rip-off of the B-17 design with the, the gunner window on the side there with the gunnery port. Exactly the same side.
Yeah. You're thinking of the U-Wing. The Y-Wing was actually in.
Sorry, not the Y-Wing. I beg your pardon.
Original Star Wars.
Yeah.
So here we have more gun cam footage of BF-109s, and the joke earlier was between is it a BF-109 or an ME-109? Originally, the 109 was produced by Bereschwak Flugenswerk, and then before it switched over to Messerschmitt. So all 109s carried the BF designation, but they're often called ME-109s because they were Messerschmitt. But that was the joke. Is it's a history World War II aeronautics nerd joke.
So yeah, this is probably a lot. This is the most difficult part of the whole mission. This last bit now, because flak is one thing, but getting attacked by enemy fighters with no escort whatsoever.
Well, and Morgan, the chat, is referencing that one of the reasons for the daylight raids was for precision bombing using the Norden site was actually only possible due to blackout conditions on targets during the day.
Oh, well, there you go.
So there we are. Thank you, Morg. Yeah, so this sequence now, I'm at 1:13 and I think coming up on 10 seconds. And I'm watching it on Amazon Prime, so I'm assuming I'm getting up to where you are now.
Sorry about that. We have this dog in the neighborhood. My dog's absolutely friggin' hate. So whenever he says anything, they just start going off.
Fair enough. That's all right. They're a staple on these shows now, Carl. This scene here, obviously, it's a mixture of models and footage, but oh yeah. So that's the that's the scene I remember most from the movie.
Yeah.
When the mother and you hear them on the radio screaming.
Yeah, as they mentioned too, they were rookies. They're not seasoned. They have no idea.
They just don't know what to do. I don't know why they didn't. I mean, this is based on stories. I don't know whether this has actually happened, but in the movie, you ask yourself, why didn't they bail out? But with them being rookies, they didn't obviously panicked, you know. Which you would if that happened. But that's the most poignant part of the movie.
Sorry about that, fellas. Jasper wants to have a go at Jerry. He's all pissed off right now.
Oh, two of them got out. Jasper.
Yeah, he wants. He's got his wart boner on. He wants some.
Okay, so here we go for the bombing run. So at this stage, we've got this is the final sequence of the movie where I'm at about 1 hour 15 roughly, and we've got about 10 minutes left in the movie now. About 10 to 15 minutes of the movie of the actual bombing sequence. After that, I think we just have like the returning home. So
it's an M3 flak helmet.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Like
I want one.
It looks really modern, doesn't it?
It looks really ancient because it looks like a Saleh from the 1400s.
But think about that, right? What's the goal of a helmet? Is to protect your head. So there's not a whole lot of development that can go in once you perfect a design.
Yeah.
So this movie was originally conceived by David Putnam as a film about a British aircraft bomber and its crew, but the film was changed to be about an American bomber because the American financial backers wanted it to be a youthful crew in the celebration of the B-17 Flying Fortress. So the producer went looking for a story and found, the memoirs of Captain Morgan and started producing the film from there. And of course, he already had a documentary movie, the original film, that he could base it on. So yeah, we're seeing the crosshair there.
Bombs away. There we go.
So as soon as the lead bomber everybody sees the lead bomber drop, everybody drops. All the other bombardiers are watching that lead plane. Yeah. So everybody else is watching the Memphis Belle. As soon as they see the Memphis Belle drop, everybody drops.
There's a metaphor in there, isn't it?
There is. There's some great
That's actual footage, yeah. Yeah, we're looking at actual footage of bomb impact there. I don't know whether that's from 1943 or Germany, but done our job for Uncle Sam. Now we're flying for ourselves. I love that shot when it pulls away on an angle like that.
When they bank up like that.
Yeah.
Cool. Good shot.
Come on, boys, let's head home.
And right there, you can see where both of the gunners in the midsection, you can see just how little room they had in those things. Man.
To move around without banging into each other.
Yeah, the waist guns are actually offset just a little bit, so they're not actually back to back, and they've got a little room so they don't bump into each other.
Yeah.
But even being offset, you can tell that they're clamped and they do overlap a little bit.
Yeah. They must have had tons of ammo.
Yeah, literally.
It's not like you can reload it. You know what I mean? If you run out.
Ooh, Rascal just got it.
Yeah, he's in the tail. Oh no, he's the shit. Yeah, I remember this bit. This is
Lift him up, help him up.
hairy as shit. I remember this. Yeah. I hated this bit in the movie.
It makes your toes crawl, huh?
It does, yeah. It makes the hairs on your toes curl.
Yeah, like gripping the carpet with my feet.
Yeah.
Make fists with your toes, gentlemen. Fists with your toes.
The camera's going.
Dummy.
Shit.
Well, it wouldn't have mattered anyways, huh?
I think it's the point that if the camera hadn't have fallen down, he would have been standing there and he would have got the full.
Gotten blown up in the face.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got to mute again. They're fighting a war. They're fighting a war. They're trying to hold off the old ones or something.
Yeah. Little bit of trivia here. One of these Messerschmitts, which aren't actually 109s, when it goes down, it makes a sort of sound as it goes down, which is a Jericho trumpet. They didn't have those sirens, so it's just Hollywood, you know.
Right. Well, to give you an idea, too, earlier we were talking about what the flight ceiling was. And these B-17s are flying at somewhere between 20 to 25,000, up all the way up to its full ceiling is 35,000 feet. But Mount Everest is only 29,000 feet. So they're actually flying higher, more than likely, or about at the same height of Everest. So that's why they've got oxygen masks.
Yeah.
You're getting up to the point that some of these, even around 20,000 feet, when you're gonna need oxygen if you're starting to exert yourself heavily.
Yeah, it would have been absolutely freezing cold as well.
They referenced it earlier, but he's got medical training to a degree. So he kind of is trying to help out Eric Stoltz's character as much as he can. There's a really good shot of a banking BF-109.
Yeah, and now we've got an engine flame.
Yep.
Sugar.
To fire number 4.
Just shot out their undercarriage controls, I think. Yeah, this is the sort of the last big scene before the end of the movie, which is where they're going to have to dive to put the fire out.
So he just said to feather the engine. One of the things when you're talking about a rotary engine or a turbine engine, when you're talking about feathering it, you're looking to achieve a sufficient rotation of the prop so that the prop rotation actually assists like any kind of pumps or fuel pumps in reversing and kind of creating a suction.
Yeah.
So when they feather it, you're looking to lower the rotation speed so that the pumps can actually kind of kick on and they're not being driven by the engine. It's going to pull everything away. So it helps them shut it down. So they kill it, then they lower the rotation down with like a brake almost. And then you're going to engage your fuel pumps to pump everything out of it. So you're not going to have an explosion condition.
Yeah,
dive trying to put the fire out. This was a tactic that was used on most anybody. If you had an engine fire, you'd cut fuel and then try to dive. And when you're diving, you're looking to actually smother the fire by starving it.
If you're really interested in the tomato soup, by the way, there's a speck of it on the captain's face, but later on, that's no longer there. So if you're really into continuity, as you're like, can I ask you about the scene where the speck of tomato soup disappears from the captain's face in scene 29? It's like, no. so there you go. They've achieved what they want to do. They've got a lot of altitude to play with, though, haven't they? When you're flying that high,
You got some altitude to play with.
Yeah, but you can see they've lost a section of the tail. Their ball gunner's gotten out, and then now they just lost an engine, and their landing gears are all. Their bottom of their plane's all shot to shit. So
yeah, and they're separated from the rest of the squadron as well.
So they just said they're at 10,000 feet, so they can pull off oxygen, so they can exert themselves, and the oxygen here is fully breathable. But they're in trouble. They're limping back.
By the way, did you know that the bombardier, the real bombardier of the Memphis Belle, was a guy called Vince Evans, who was a Hollywood writer for Bogart, friend of Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Stewart, June Allison, and restaurant operator. He was a race car driver. Completed a second tour of duty aboard a B-29 with Morgan in the Pacific. So he didn't give up here. He went off to fight in the Pacific.
Yeah, a lot of these guys that are on the Memphis Belle historically went on to go do tours in the Pacific on B-29s.
Yeah, and Morgan was the first one to fly a bombing mission of a B-29 over Japan or one of the Japanese islands.
It's funny you mentioned Jimmy Stewart because he was a bomber pilot in World War II.
That's right, yeah. And people forget a lot of the actors
Brigadier General
were veterans, yeah. I mean, something like I don't know how much you know about Doctor Who, but the classic Doctor Who's like John Pertwee was actually like in the early version of the SAS.
Mm-hmm.
Fought in the Navy, and it was just it was something you didn't even brag about, because if you were of that age, you would have fought in the war.
Yeah, I mean, but you can't talk about Hollywood badasses without failing to mention Christopher Lee. So Christopher Lee,
he was a Nazi hunter.
Yeah, he was pre-SAS, all that stuff.
Yeah, he was
the proto-SAS basically, and then he was working with partisans and.
Yeah, so here Stoltz is pretty badly hurt, so they're actually going to throw him out of the plane with a parachute so that he can get medical assistance. Even though he's going to be captured by the Germans, they'll at least give him the medical assistance that he needs, and he has a fighting chance.
Well, hopefully, yeah. They're more likely to just shoot him in the head, to be honest. That's the truth.
Well, it depends upon who they get captured by. If they get captured by SS, yeah, they're getting shot.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen The Great Escape?
Well, yes.
But yeah, that point about Christopher Lee, he was asked several times to join like MI5 and things like that. You know, he was incredibly intelligent.
He's also cousins with Ian Fleming.
Yeah. So here we see the planes returning. Obviously, Memphis Belle hasn't returned yet, so the wait begins to see if the plane. So the perspective changes. You're now seeing it from their point of view.
The plane shot off a red flare. The red flare meant that they needed help. That when you get down, they had an issue. So any plane that was coming in that would have a medical issue or a maintenance issue or anything like that would shoot off a red flare coming in so that they could be identified.
Yeah.
Now they're on one engine. Oh, no, two engines.
Two engines.
Highcock Jr. there doing a little song. There was a stage there, wasn't there, in the early 90s where there was like a return to jazz crooning for a bit.
They're on two engines, so they're trying to shed weight so that their fuel economy can go up. So they're dropping anything they can. They're in safe territory, so they're dropping their guns, they're dropping heavy equipment. Anything that's got any weight to it, they're going to shed over the channel as they're trying to limp back home.
Well, I'm glad they didn't drop Danny, because seriously, they would have just shot him in the head, basically. There would have been no fighting chance.
Only if he was captured by SAS. I mean, SS. If there was the main German army were soldiers just like everybody else. It was the SS were the firm cultish believers that were I don't know.
Diehards.
Well, I told you the story about my great uncle, right, Pete?
A soldier is a soldier. At the end of the day, not everybody on the German side or the Italian side was a dyed-in-the-wool believer of fascism. Some of them were
Well, they put the damn uniform on.
Yeah, they were. I'm not saying they weren't wrong, but you could also say that we sided with the Soviets, who killed over 40 million of their own people less than 5 years before this. So, if you're a Ukrainian, who was your liberator?
Yeah.
At a certain point, it gets very foggy as to the Germans were bad, and the Russians were bad, and the Allies fought with the Russians against the Germans. And then right after the war, the Russians became our enemy. But it's kind of the immediate villain is the most important. Once we defeat the Nazis, then we can worry about the communists.
Yeah, who was the general who wanted to continue the war and march on?
That would be George S. Patton.
Yes. And what happened to him at the end of the war? Was he just sort of shuttled off somewhere?
Just a small accident that killed him.
Sorry?
He was assassinated by the military-industrial complex.
There's a fantastic movie about him, though, isn't there, as well?
Yes, with George C. Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be misconstrued that I have any kind of sympathy for the Nazi cause or anything.
No. I think you're right in respect of most of them weren't political zealots.
I would view your average soldier in almost any conflict on any side as just a man that's caught up in something much bigger than him. Whether that man is wearing a red coat and is on American soil in 1777, or whether they're wearing a Wehrmacht uniform on 1944 on French soil.
So here we see them waiting to see if the plane will return. So we see both perspectives. We see the view from the crew themselves, but also what the ground crew would have gone through, just busy waiting for nothing and hoping that something's going to happen, something good is going to happen. And here we are. Yeah, the undercarriage is broken. There's only one wheel.
What would that be, Kent or Suffolk or something there, Pete?
Yeah, that would be one of the home counties. Most of the another Indiana Jones moment there. Yeah, most of these bases were in the home counties, and so it would have either been Kent or Essex or Anglia, all the way up to Norwich, most of them. So the last sequence. The last sequence of the movie, essentially the last 5 to 10 minutes, is all about can they land the plane, because it's a wreck. And now if this plane crashes, they're all dead. So even though they've gone all the way out and come all the way back, they still might die now at the very end. And there's the captain of the Red Dwarf. Commenting there.
It's amazing they can even steer this thing with the tail shut up so bad. And obviously they're having trouble, you can see right there.
Yeah. And
well, you got to drink, Carl. They're singing Danny Boy again.
Oh shit, you're right. I didn't sign on for this, Pete.
I'm getting too old for this shit. Yeah, the cabin of the B-17 is really cramped. When I saw the documentaries on it and everything, it's quite a small space right at the front.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of room to do much of anything.
And this is a bit where the final moment, touchdown. There we are. And that shot there where the wheel goes straight up. I'm sure that camera was wrecked doing that shot.
And obviously that opening scene with the plane coming and crashing was foreshadowing of this moment.
Yeah, good point. So the cycle's complete, but we have a hopeful ending rather than a tragic ending.
Well, and two, it's a testament to the script is interesting here because you have the guy that throughout all of it, DB Sweeney's character is I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. He's manually lowering the gear, saying I'm gonna live, we're gonna live, we're gonna live. He's totally changed his philosophy. They're so close.
Oh, so his is a hero's journey.
Yep.
So is he the hero of this story?
Yep, it's the rise to the moment of greatness.
Someone else really has an arc. It's his arc.
Mm.
That's good. Good catch, Hugs. Good catch.
Yeah. That's it. Switches off.
Yeah, so now you get to see as the plane comes to a stop.
And the dog. Oh my God, they threw the dog in for just that extra punch to the gut.
Yeah.
There you see the burned out engine, the paint fading. Yeah, just as a former model guy, I love stuff like shots
That's
like
nice.
that. Cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let me know when you get to the bit where Morgan picks up the picture of his sweetheart, who he didn't actually go on to marry.
Thanks for ruining a nice Hollywood ending, Peter.
It's not me who gave that information. Aldous did earlier on.
Yeah, I did earlier. But everybody by now has forgotten it because they're tied up in the drama of the scene.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody.
Oh my God,
So yes, they've made it back, but what kind of a victory is it when you land in England?
we got the picture now.
Warm beer and cold weather.
Oh, that is the burn of the night right there. You can't take that standing like that, Pete. Sit down, I mean.
Yeah. Actually, that would be chilled, wouldn't it? That champagne if it being at 30,000 feet.
That would be, yeah.
Brilliant.
That's also why all their bomber jackets are heavily lined, of course, because it would have been so cold up there.
Yeah, it would have been absolutely freezing. As we say here, brassic.
Yeah.
Or brass monkeys is another one we use. There we go. So, closing scene, the aerial scene as we pan up from the plane. And
well,
that's
I love
really
that
nice.
they're getting off the plane and they're all lining up for the photo. And, just take the picture. And Eric Stoltz is wounded. They thought he was going to die.
Yeah.
And what's the first thing they do when they get him on the ground? They hand him a cigarette.
Yeah. That's high tea right there, boys. That's high tea. Grandpa didn't mess around, all right?
Yeah.
Now they're going to go on furlough to London and bang some British chicks.
This is it. Most of these bases were in an hour of London, so they had the best shows, dance halls, theaters, restaurants. So they were well trained, they were well paid, and so they should be. They took a lot of risk. But at the end of the movie, there it's just saying over 250,000 aircraft battled for supremacy in the skies over Western Europe. Nearly 200,000 aircrew lost their lives. Let's put that into perspective. 200,000 aircrew lost their lives.
Just for perspective, Pete, that's approximately the number of men that died on D-Day.
Yeah. So there you go. If you weigh that together, it was a war of attrition. And, did it really, was it worth the sacrifice? Well, how effective was it? Did it make a difference?
They got to be including British air crews too.
Oh
yeah, it's got to be inclusive of all.
That's British, that's Free French, that's Polish, that's American. That's anybody that fought against Fortress Europe.
Because that was about our total losses for the entire war, wasn't it? Both Pacific and European theater was about 250,000, killed.
Yeah.
And now we're doing the nice ending here where we see the pictures.
I always appreciate a film that does credits like this, where they give the moment of the actor.
I like that as well. Yeah.
Just kind of so you can put the face with the name.
Yeah. They used to do this at the start of movies when movies first got started. They'd have all the credits. You had to have the credits at the start of the movie for everybody, which is why when Lucas did Star Wars, he got hammered by the critics and everybody because he just went straight into the movie instead of putting all the credits up first.
He was actually booted out of the Directors Guild for that, wasn't he?
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, good movie, man.
Yeah, overall thoughts?
We weren't expecting Citizen Kane or The Third Man or anything like that here. But we got a good action-packed story that we care about the characters, and hell yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Any thoughts, then, Aldous?
This is just it's a much more feel-good movie than The Longest Day. Obviously less of a propaganda piece to a degree, but I think it speaks to watching it in 2019 for a film that was made in 1990. I think it really speaks to how much Hollywood has changed, because I don't think a movie that celebrates even fighting Nazis, fighting one of the most evil organizations that has ever crossed humanity's path in our extended long history. I don't think a film like this can be made now because of how much it shows that these men sacrificed and are heroes. I don't think you get the sense out of most Hollywood films anymore that you get out of this, that these are just men. They're average men, and they were put in extraordinary circumstances, and God bless them. They made a lot of them made the ultimate sacrifice, but they rose to the occasion. And it's a testament to that generation's dedication and willingness to the cause of liberty and freedom for all of humanity.
This is what real Nazi punching looks like. You punch Nazi with 500 pounds of TNT.
Absolutely, Carl. Think about the events.
If you're out there, if you're a keyboard warrior and you're really talking about punching Nazis, last time I checked, the U.S. Army, the U.S. Marines, the Air Force, and the Navy are always looking for a few good men or women to sign up, and they might not go by Nazi today, but there's a lot of places in the world where there are people that espouse the philosophies of those fucks that still need to taste some lead and choke on.
Yeah, exactly. Who was it? Tropic Thunder. The guy who plays Iron Man. Why have I gone blank?
Oh.
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah. Well, his character says he's asked what he does for a living by the people in the jungle, the baddies, and he says, "I'm a land farmer, motherfucker."
Peter, you never cease. Each episode, you get me one good time. That was it this time.
But yeah, the overall thought for me on this movie was that, it was polished Hollywood, but that is interesting. It's almost 30 years old, and the difference between then and now, and the fact that you can't do a movie like this now, just a standard hero, a bunch of heroes who go out to do a mission, complete the mission, come home safely, and what that means, and the significance, historical significance, because there's so much, there's so much political crap now in the ether. Yeah,
well, it's interesting too, Pete, because they're all everymen. Everybody in this character is an everyman in the story concept. There's no Paragon, there's no Gandalf, there's no Merlin. They're just everymen that are doing their job, and at the end of the day, they're not setting out to be heroes. They just, through their actions, through their deeds, we're highlighting one plane of 10 in this case, or one plane of 30 that is made up of 10 men who are all heroes, simply because they took off and they chose to do the mission, and the mission was for the broader sense. And did the mission accomplish? Would it end the war? Would it do anything? No, it's just another domino in a long series of things, and its ramifications might have been minimal, it might have been massive, who knows? But at the end of the day, High Command says this is what we're going to do, and these men stepped up and said, "Okay, let's do it."
Exactly. I mean, one of the bits of information I've got here is that the ball turret gunner of the real Memphis Belle was Cecil Scott from correct me if I pronounce this incorrectly, Altoona, PA. From down there, I could see everything, he said. He fired at a great many German fighters and achieved one damaged credit. He retired from the Ford Motor Company after 30 years. So he went back to America after the war and worked for Ford, which is ironic. Considering the Ford Motor Company.
Would you mind explaining why the irony?
Well, Ford had some interesting donations to certain places before the war started.
Ford did have some interesting connections in the 30s. But I mean, there was a lot of people that did. Lindbergh did,
Yeah.
he was an American hero, and he, after things got started, dropped that association. Obviously, Ford did too.
Yeah.
But yeah, they did have
A lot of that had to do with as the rise of Nazism became out, before it reared its ugly head for what it actually was. Its primary goal was anti-communist, which is ironic because they were avowed socialists.
Right.
But the party line was to fight the rise of communism, and they were very militant. And anybody that was anti-communist actually would obviously gravitate towards that. As they went into power and as they did more and implemented more of their programs, they were shown for what they were, which is socialists that are no different than many of the giant talking heads that propagate our media today. They are wolves in sheep's clothing.
It's a highly
than which they are.
Yeah, it was a highly authoritarian, extreme version of socialism, enforced with a dictatorial, military, strict law.
Well, absolutely, and I abide by one simple thing, and not to get too political, but anytime you hear somebody talking about something, it's real simple. Just ask, does this increase or decrease an individual man's liberty? And if you have to steal liberty from one man or steal from one man to give another man freedom, then it's not freedom. It's indentured servitude and it's slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's funny how the American people have came to, the point that they're at now, because it started in indentured servitude. And that wasn't unique to any particular ethnicity. That was everybody. Most people who went to America at the start were indentured servants, and they worked out of it.
And there's a difference too between willing. If I sign up, a mortgage is indentured servitudism, because I'm going to guarantee a portion of my wealth in exchange for a loan. That's what a loan is. It's minor indentured servitudism. But indentured servitude is different than slavery. Forced indentured servitude is slavery, because you have no choice. And to say that just by the nature of being a citizen you have a choice, well, that's ridiculous.
So thank goodness all these bombing missions happened anyway, however successful they were. I'm no expert. I'm sure somebody will be able to inform me what the real impact of them were. But overall, the story itself, the message was that, war against tyranny, but working as a team to overcome and get back safely. And one little goof at the end of the movie, which I've just seen here, is when the plane's landing, they're lowering the landing gear, we see the right wheel down and locked in place. But when we see them lowering the other landing gear, it's actually the left wheel that's down and locked. So I didn't even notice that. So, but there you go. But on that note, I'd just like to thank everybody who's joined us live, and also anybody who watches recorded. And of course, as always, I'd like to thank both of my co-hosts, Carl and Aldous, and also Eric Weathers, for joining us tonight. And with that, thank you for watching. Good night.